Hi, everybody. Gina Cavalier here, the Liberated Healer podcast. And today we have Dr. Michelle Maidenberg on. She's written a couple books, but the one that we're focusing on today is Ace Your Life, which is an amazing, complete guide and workbook to help you through anything that you want to transform in your life. So, welcome, Michelle. How are you?
Thank you. Thanks so much for having me. I appreciate it. And I have to say, you are one of the few podcasters that asked for the book and actually read it. So I want to say that out loud because I really, really appreciated that.
Oh, well, I love that because some people say, here's a PDF, and without knowing my background, I struggle with, reading online. I'm online all the time, and it's hard for me to
Yeah,
digest information. So some people don't want to send the book. So thank you for actually doing that. And I actually keep a library of everybody I've had on the show that way, and it's very meaningful and it's a great exchange. So I appreciate that willingness to do that as well because I know that all it could be a little costly and stuff, but it's better. It's better this way. So I appreciate that.
yeah.
You are definitely a guided light in our world. Just all, taking your intelligence, doing the schoolwork to get through everything that you had to do, but then also 100% giving back in the ways that you do with the Boys and Girls Club. This book is truly detailed and crazy. I mean, it must have been insane to do it. And then also, I really love the 501c3 that you have that's helping people at the end stages of life do videos for their friends and family. So, you just have a lifelong, of helping people. So let's give a little bit of a background and what led you to this book and things like that.
Sure, sure. So I'm a private practitioner. I have a private practice in Harrison, New York. Yes, I definitely dedicate my life towards, my mission is really helping other people. And that's what drives me. That's what motivates me. That is completely who I am. And also, it encompasses my values. And a lot of my work is value based. It's really, really important to me. So I teach mindfulness, how to integrate mindfulness practice and clinical practice at NYU, which I love doing. Also, I also do weekly um, guided meditations on YouTube, which I love doing, and I also write for Psychology Today on a variety of different topics. And I'm always trying to share little tidbits and, you know, um, words of wisdom, so to speak, to help people, in a multitude of ways. Um, so I do have advanced training in a number of different treatment modalities, and then I write a ton because I love doing that, and it's such a amazing creative outlet for me, and it helps, And I don't only write on self help, but whenever there's a topic that comes out in the media that I have like a strong passion for, like I'm also an advocate. I really believe in advocacy. I recently wrote an article about a suicidality and fentanyl poisoning amongst teens because I was having like a number of people in my practice, which was just so sad, and really emotionally impacted me that were dying of fentanyl poisoning. I had one parent who I was seeing for some time for anxiety, and his high school senior son, one time um, yeah, experimented with a pill and it was laced with fentanyl, and I could go on and on. I could tell you story after story, just the atrocity that, and people don't know about it. Parents don't know about it. They don't talk about it with their kids. And I was just aghast. So whenever there's a topic that I think is important to get out in the media, I really try to write about it because I really want to get the word out. Unfortunately, those are the blogs that don't get as much viewing, which is shocking to me.
Really?
because my self-help blogs get like hundreds of thousands of readers, and then those get like thousands. And I'm like, what? Because,
Wow.
as a parent, when I see a topic that's written about teens that has to do with health and safety, I'm on that, so that really surprises me sometimes. But I think it also just has to do with the span of how far it reaches. It's kind of social media, right? So we don't have any control over that sometimes. So anyway, and I do a variety of different things, like I said, to really help people. I do a lot of work around anxiety, around trauma. I do a lot of work around relationship challenges. It's really vast. It's really has more to do because people always ask me, what type of people do you work with? And I say it's more about the treatments that I use
Yep.
because I have advanced training in certain treatments that is very versatile, which is wonderful. And I, cultivated this method, which is called the ACE method, which is predicated on acceptance, compassion, and empowerment. And to me, what was also interesting when I wrote this is the publishers were really challenging me and saying, like, who is this written for? Like, we can't market it unless it's written for a certain population. I said, no, this is the way to guide your life so that you're living your best life and living the life you want.
Yeah.
And the skills I use with kids, I use with teens, I use with adults. And what's so beautiful, and I just absolutely get so passionate and so excited, is I hear these teens using my lingo.
Oh, that's so exciting.
Yeah. And we have like this conversation around these concepts, which they encompass in their life. And they ask themselves that question. Like they ask themselves, am I leaning into my values? If I decide to behave this way, or am I leaving outside of my values if I decide to behave this way? And I'm like, my mind is blown when I hear that. I'm like, yes.
That's amazing. It's creating the healthy boundary because it's not just up to the parents. I mean, they can't do all the work by themselves. And if somebody really wants to have a full life and ace their life, like you said, this is a great book for that. Especially there's a lot of people that, don't have communicative parents or, you work with ages 8 and up, I saw. So you work with very, that very important time frame, 8 and up, it's,
Yeah.
how are you going to shape that person's future? And sometimes the parents have no idea. And so that's why
Yeah.
this book is even great if you're a parent and want to,
Oh, yeah.
try to get that, say, hey, I don't even know all the answers, but, they need to find these kind of avenues so they can,
And this is versatile, like,
yeah,
literally, I use it with all different ages, and I use it a lot with my, clients, my patients who are parents. I use it a lot in parenting skills, and I
yeah.
use it myself with my own parenting skills.
And
So they're definitely versatile for sure.
And I want to go back just for a second on what we are talking about that those blogs don't get a lot of attention. I just feel like
Yeah,
there's a lot of denial that happens, and with something so heavy like that, and thinking that it couldn't happen to them, and that's where I feel like that's happening, and that the truth is it's everywhere, and
yeah,
everywhere that you go, and you really can't let anybody get near that stuff. They were saying police officers, even when they're trying to help someone, they get it ingested into their hands and things like that, and they're having to go to the hospital. I mean, it's so intense.
the
So
problem with it, unfortunately, is it takes very little to be lethal. Yeah, where other types of substances and, it takes, a large amount, this takes a very small amount. Like, if you could imagine this kid took one pill
yeah,
and it led to his demise. I mean, a pill, one little pill, and it was lethal. So, we're talking about a very serious chronic problem. And I know that when I speak to my kids, I emphasize to them, I say to them, if you want to drink, not that I'm advocating for drinking, but, drink rather than taking any kind of substance. Like you're safer doing that, and again,
911.
yeah,
It's
in moderation, in a healthy way, and being, conscious and mindful and all of that. Yes.
Yeah, so we hope everybody can, like, notice that's 911 and look at your world around you and have these
Yeah.
conversations. So how can someone ace their life? Oh, the other thing I wanted to mention on your website, which is really
Yeah.
very informative and amazing. When you go there, you have a take a quiz, "Are you stuck in your life?" And it's
Yeah.
14 minutes. And I that is amazing
Oh, thank you.
because you can have a book is a big commitment, right? And it's overwhelming if you're going through trauma. You know what I mean? Someone who's gone through a lot of different traumas. Sometimes I couldn't get through a book and I just needed that's why I love YouTube and these
Mm,
conversations because if I can't do anything, I could put YouTube on and just close my eyes, right? Or do a
yeah.
meditation, right? But
Yeah.
I like the "Are you stuck 14 minutes?" Because so many people are stuck and
Mhm.
they're just a little bit lost. So I've been sending that link to people and just that are my friends that are saying, "I don't know what my next step in life is. I just know that I wanna move from here." And can you talk just briefly about being stuck?
Yeah, I mean that's actually, when somebody asks me what is this book about, that's exactly what I say. It's about stuckness. We all, every single one of us could relate to that. We all are stuck in some kind of way. It could be, like I said, a relationship, kind of challenge. It could be something personal that comes up. It could be anger and frustration. It could be whatever it is. We all are, we're not unscathed because we all have adversity in our lives. Like kind of the Buddhist precepts are foundationally are around life is full of human suffering. We have an expectation that we're supposed to like have this great, wonderful, seamless life. And that's actually not the case at all. Because if you're human, you're going to go through adversity. It's kind of right. It goes hand in hand with being a human being. So you kind of have to know how to pivot and roll with the punches in order to cope effectively, right? Um, so I always say you could have adversity and cope effectively at the same time. One
Mm,
doesn't have to obviously prevail the other. So, acing your life and, getting through stuckness, as we call it. And again, I know that's a pretty ambiguous word, but
mhm,
stuckness is around anything that is for you. And I'll speak, for myself, something that comes up for me personally is I know I get triggered. And by the way, that's going to be my next book because because I'm fascinated by getting triggered. Um, and what happens is, I have a narrative that plays out that is so based on my history and so based on my neural pathways, and what's been integrated into my neural pathways in my, childhood and my history. And I just go right there, zoom, without even a minute. It's kind of like this, it's my neural pathways. I can't help it. Now I've fortified right this space between the thinking and doing, and I'm working on that every day of my life. I strive, but I sometimes get stuck. I sometimes get hooked. And when that happens, right, I really have to use my skills because then I could act out in a way that's definitely not in line with my best self. So I have to really feel it in my body. I have to recognize what's going on in my mind. I have to really act from a mindful place, right? I have to be real with myself and have to face myself and recognize this part of myself that I would, most people beat themselves up for having that part. They have disdain for that part. They want to avoid that part. They want to get rid of that part. But when we disdain parts of ourselves, we're disdaining all of ourselves.
mm.
That affects our self-confidence. That affects our decision making. That affects our interpersonal relationships. And I could go on and on and on and on. It's endless. So when we're able to really face ourselves in a really authentic, genuine, compassionate exclamation point way, all of that changes. And it's magic. It literally is. And I always tell people when you make that transition and you're able really to cultivate that self-love and self-compassion, your life follows suit. It's just like this beautiful transformation that happens. One thing that I really tried to do, so that I put so much effort into, is one is to make sure that my book was research evidence based because that's really important to me. I mean, I think it's important to offer advice and feedback, and I do, of course, and even anecdotes of my life and my life of my patients, but it needs to be factual too. It needs to be evidence based. And I really made it an attempt to do that. The other thing is you could weave in and out of it. Not everyone's stuckness, right, looks the same. So you extrapolate the skills that are pertinent to you. And that's the point of this book and just the work that I do. There's no cookie cutter. And I always tell people, they always say to me, I just got off a call before this. How long do I have to be in treatment? And what does that look like? And I said, you know what? I wish I had an answer to that question.
I look
except
at
that
the crystal ball.
except that I haven't even met you.
Yeah.
I don't even know. I don't even know what, your history is. I don't know what, some of the kind of, challenges you're grappling with. etc. Like, I need to have a relationship with you to be able to kind of talk. I need to collaborate with you. You know yourself better than I do. So I want to work with you. Like, that's not even so much for me to make that decision. That's for us to make that decision together collaboratively.
Wow. Um, I just get so giggly and excited because things have changed so much. Persons like yourself weren't really um, led to go down this route of mindfulness and things like. And doctors just have this openness now that they didn't really. They weren't even. They maybe had it, but they were kind of told to stay in their box and
Hmm.
people need to number one, you have to say I need to heal myself first. Not saying you can't get help from many different sources, but if you, it's like being an AA or what, you have to make that commitment to yourself and say I
Okay.
know that I have X, Y, and Z, but I'm the only one that is with me 24 hours a day. And
Hmm.
that thing can come up at 3 o'clock in the morning, and I can't have
Yeah.
all of my support team on speed dial. And some people don't have a support team. And those are the people that we lose to suicide and other things. And there is a loneliness crisis in the United States. We've made that. And what I feel like we're trying to do is pull people out and tell them, you're really not alone, even though you feel alone sometimes. And there's people like us and the tribe that we've created around that we're all dedicating our I dedicate I'm in service. and
Yes.
and that's why I get up every day, is to be in service of myself first. And that was
Hmm.
really hard for me, though, because um it felt so much better to help other people
Hmm.
than when that was a really bad pattern that I was stuck in, which was
Mm.
like over giving. So I would
Uh-huh.
overgive to the point where I would have nothing. Like I would make dental appointments for my friends and family, but my teeth were falling out, is the analogy I would use. So that
Yeah.
was my part of stuckness. And
Mm.
I think a lot of people actually do that, especially when they have wounds, especially abandonment wounds and things like that. And that can lead down a very sad and lonely road.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. Well, it could be very self-deprecating, no
Yeah.
doubt.
And that's what you were saying about the having that disdain, because that were is whether my that was my storyline, but it's all the same disdain. It's like beating yourself up um for and then when you learn how to love those crazy parts about you and be like, yeah, I've had X, Y, and Z, and that's
Yes.
a part of my uh what makes me unique and interesting. And you know what? I don't know. It,
Mhm.
it it is a long journey to get to the other side of it. It can be, if it's so put in your mind that is such a negative, like whatever it is, like I came from the wrong side of the tracks, or I don't have an education, or I come from an
Mhm.
abusive background, right? And we wear these stories so close to our heart.
Yes. Well, listen, they become part of what we can appreciate about ourselves, which I always have people really kind of hone in on, is our adaptations and our coping. Our minds and our bodies are incredible at protecting us. I mean, beyond, beyond. And I do work with a lot of people who have anxiety. Anxiety is like one of my specialties. And I can't even tell you how people, like I said, disdain their minds and their bodies because of their reaction to anxiety, right? Because we have a somatic physiological response to anxiety, because of our nervous system, obviously. And then we also have, again, right, kind of the neurological and the physiological, right, makeup in our brain and in our mind. And people get, like, again, they get really, really wound up, and they get insistent, and they get, conflictual feelings about the way their mind and their body is reacting. So it becomes like, thoughts about the thoughts and feelings about the thoughts and thoughts about the feelings, etc. It becomes a spiral. And then, like you just mentioned, it's this avoidance. They're left with avoidance, and they're left with resistance. And, when you get that, that's when you get, like I said, that self-deprecation. I don't
Mhm.
Yeah, how many people I can't tell you people say to me, "I don't wanna think this way. I don't wanna feel this way. I don't want my body to react this way." And they fight with themselves. They get into these battles, literally, like, these battles. And you know what I say to them? Because this is such a great metaphor. I said, "Do you know any, like, kind of toddlers or" "Yes, yeah, okay." So I said, "What happens if you have a toddler that's tantruming? What happens? What do you do?" I said, "Do you battle with them? Do you battle with them and say, 'Don't stop it,' or, what would happen if you did?" Well, what do you think would happen? The kid would, like, I mean, talk about a tantrum, like, we have tantrum times 5, like, right? They'll just spiral out of control. No, but if you sit with them and you're kind and caring and loving and coddling and nurturing and affectionate, all of a sudden you'll see, like, slowly but slowly, their nervous system will relax.
Yeah.
Right? And that's just the way we are. We need to be there for ourselves. We can't always rely on the other because we're not always in a position where we can have the support of the other. And when we do it for ourselves, that's when we're building like authentic confidence, And I always say, I just used this example yesterday. So I said, if you're walking down the street and somebody kind of says to you, "You're ugly," right? There's different ways you can react to that. So one person would perseverate over, "Oh my gosh, I'm ugly," right? And they would just kind of think about it and get really sad and upset that the person said it. And again, it would last days and days, right? Another person would say, "That was really nasty for that person to say to me, and I'm very insulted, but like, okay, that's their opinion, I'm not for everybody or whatever." Why? Because foundationally and fundamentally, they appreciate their level of attractiveness, whatever that is, right? So, when you get
Or
triggered,
or you could say, "Wow, they must be really going through something to
that's
have,
right.
you know."
That kind of reaction. Exactly. Yes. Or like have compassion for them and yourself. And
Mhm,
yourself. Yeah,
mhm.
exactly. Ideally, you want to that to be the case. The point that I was making though is when you actually hear things and you actually internalize them in a negative way, that is very specifically what you need to be working on.
Mhm.
It's a direct portal to let you know your insecurities and your challenges.
I just got a vision of this one video I saw, this really little girl, maybe 4 or something like that, just tell her mom
Mhm.
she was ugly, and the mom was like, "No, what are you talking about?" And she started crying like, "I'm ugly." And, like, I
Yeah.
just cried when I saw that because it starts so young,
Yes.
and
Oh
so, you
yeah.
know,
So yeah.
and then in the schools and things like that, and, so
Well, I have a 14-year-old daughter. I have
okay.
3 boys that are older, and then I have a 14-year-old daughter. I was hearing those things come out of her mouth literally when she was so young. I mean, I was astonished that she had any kind of, well, developmentally, any awareness about all that. Oh, it is so, especially with social media
Yeah,
and just, I mean, it is beyond. You know, but it really has to do again with at your core, you know. So I feel like if you build up that core, right? So like here's an example. If you say to somebody, you did great, right? Or you say to your child, "Oh, you did great." I don't do that. I say to my child, "How do you feel you did?"
mm,
Because I want it to come from them. I want them to reflect on their own behaviors and say, like, wow, I'm really proud of myself. Because that's teaching them, right? That positive affirmation and the self reflection, which we do not learn. We do not learn, especially parents. And, this is just the way it is. We try to, be helpful and caring, but sometimes we could be pretty critical too. And I know I fall into that myself sometimes,
yeah,
right? But we don't realize the messages that it's sending. So you really want, and this is what I teach my patients too, like you want them to look within. So, when it comes to confidence building, which is a really important piece too, I really connect it to our values, and I never underestimate any little tiny behavior that is actually leaning towards a value. And I'll give you another example, like thoughtfulness and care is a really core value of mine. So I could tell you throughout the day, I note every single time that I, act in a caring, kind way. It could be the most minute thing. It could be like the other day.
I
The other
love
day
that.
I was in the city in Bryant Park, okay, and I'll just this is just an example. And a woman, she was coming up the stairs, and she had a stroller with a child, and she was obviously lifting it up to try to get up the stairs. And right away, I ran up to her and I said, "Oh, can I help you?" You know, and I took note of that. I said, I could have just ignored that because there were plenty of other people there who were probably bigger and stronger than me, right? And she was actually with somebody too. But I said, no, it didn't matter. Like, I wanted to extend that to her because that's who I am, because I cared. And at the end of my day, I actually sit down, in my meditation, and I think about what did I do today to lean into my core values. And that directly. So if somebody came over to me and said to me, "You're not thoughtful," I would laugh at them, like literally. I would say, "You know what? I could tell you this, 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 and this that I did today that was very thoughtful." Yeah.
So, Michelle, can you tell us a little bit about integrating your shadow exercises that you have in the book? Because I was working on that a little bit, and I think
Sure.
that people are starting to hear this word shadow and what does
Mhm.
that mean, and is it
Yeah.
scary, and things like that.
Yeah. So shadow is based on Jungian theory, Carl Jung. And my friend, actually, Melanie Ryan, who's an incredible therapist and author as well, she actually wrote a book on it too. And I'm doing personal work with her on my shadow, which has been life changing, I have to say. Yeah, it's been so life changing because I realize, remember how I said I was talking to you about the trigger before? I know very specifically what triggers me and where I go to. And that's been life changing for me. Like literally, because I asked myself that question, and then boom, like my neural pathways like open up and I go right into my prefrontal cortex, which is my kind of processing, thinking, executive functioning mind, rather than my amygdala, which is more the feeling mind, which doesn't necessarily lead me to most positive behavior when I'm just kind of solely in my amygdala, which is what we do because of our nervous system getting activated. And we
Hmm.
go into that kind of the parasympathetic nervous system. So that being said, we do have the dark shadow and the golden shadow, which so we really do need to face ourselves and to be real and authentic. And that's not such an easy process. I don't know if you saw my TED talk, but I did a TED talk on circumventing emotional avoidance
Hmm.
and talked about how we have to very slowly almost do exposure so that we could lean into and risk avoiding leading into that kind of understanding of our dark shadow.
Yeah.
So what is a dark shadow? It's parts of ourselves that isn't cultivated. I mean, that's the only way I could say it. It's parts that need to grow. And
Yeah.
we all have them. So the part that I was speaking to before, and I'll speak for myself, is I know I go right into rejection. That is like my place. My brain just goes there. And sometimes it's valid and, etc. And sometimes it's exaggerated also, right? Because I may have a perception about something that's a little distorted based on my narrative. And I have to kind of take a step back and I have to say to myself, and the rejection, which sometimes is unconscious, leads to agitation, leads to frustration, leads to anger, right? And I could sometimes act from that place. So once I identify what's making me feel, so to speak, rejected, I'm able to really trail it back and ask myself those questions like, am I actually being rejected? Is that that person's intention? Could I, how could I see this differently if I really open myself up? And how do I want to behave based on these thoughts and feelings? And that really allows me to be a lot more mindful and really take myself, kind of to a mindful, like again, grounded place. And if I can't get there, because sometimes the activation goes from 0 to 5 and like literally like that, then I will ground myself until I'm able to behave in a conscious way, not in a subconscious or unconscious way.
Mm.
So when we embrace this shadow, our shadow self, we learn to integrate this self-love and self-compassion. And it's really more self-compassion than anything, like because we're very hard on ourselves. We're more hard on ourselves than anybody. Um, so we have to, in order to do that, we really do have to evaluate our emotional reactions, which is a very, very important part. So we have to get to know our parts, like dig deep and dirty. We have to, we have to learn how to be self-compassionate because that doesn't always come so easily to most of us. And we have to empathize and express that deep compassion to the parts of us that need the compassion. Those are the parts that need the compassion more than anything. Like my rejected part that I was just talking about, that, and when I feel rejected, that's all I need, literally, from myself and from maybe the other person as well. And I know that it's so uncanny. Like if somebody comes at me with anger and frustration because I had the feeling or because I had the thought or because I had the reaction, I get protective and defensive and I completely, again, my adaptations kind of kick in. But if somebody just comes over to me and they're nurturing and they just give me a hug or they tell me, what's going on, what's happening right now, boom, I am like a different person. My nervous system just automatically relaxes. It's like fascinating because it feels attuned to, and that's all it needs in that moment. So, but in that moment, I need to be compassionate to that rejected side because
Yeah.
it's suffering in that moment. It's distressed. It doesn't deserve to be berated and, treated aggressively. It needs nurturing. So it really takes time and effort to really learn how to do and practice those skills.
Yeah.
And what I did is I listed questions that you could ask yourself. So like for example, in evaluating your emotional reactions, the question is what thoughts and feelings got evoked during that dialogue or interaction.
Yep.
We lose sight of that because we get so hooked and so spiraled so quickly that we don't even have time to even consider that. The question I always emphasize that people should ask themselves is how else can I see this? That is like a magic question. That is literally a question that you should have written, on an index card or a post-it and like plastered somewhere.
This
Yeah.
is skills for life for men and for women and for children,
Oh yeah. Oh
teenagers,
yeah.
because I used to remember back in before I really did more work on myself that I would something would happen like say a rejection or some like a bad situation or maybe an email or and something someone said and I would hold on to that for
Mhm.
days in my
Mhm.
heart, feel the heaviness, feel the sadness, maybe the loss of the relationship or and then
Or the or
ups
the
and
fear
downs.
or the fear of the loss of the relationship.
Yeah, and all of the emotions that come with it, and then the self-deprecating, and then the denial and the avoidance, and like everything you're saying. And because
Yeah.
I actually have put a lot of this kind of stuff into practice. I had a recent thing happen a couple days ago that I think that if that happened to me a couple years ago, it would have taken me a week to get over. And it was a
Mhm.
bad situation, and I was very hurt. And I was talking to myself with my tools, and I remember thinking, "Man, I am livid. I am livid that this happened." And I got in the car, I took my dogs to the park, we started walking, I started looking at it in a different way, and I literally came back within, 45 minutes completely a little bit different and handled it different, the reaction. And I always say when people when somebody emails you or texts you something really emotional too, and you're like, "What?" You know, just don't do anything for a little bit, you know?
Yeah.
Just
Yeah.
and that's the protecting of yourself because you're not gonna say the same thing in that moment that you're gonna say in 10 minutes or 15 minutes. And those are these tools that you're talking about too, right? Just going,
Yeah, well, because formatively, if I always say that I really do teach a lot about kind of the physiology of our minds because it's really, really critical to understand that. And most people don't understand it. And when I do explain it, they're like, oh, wow, they're you're fascinated, I'm fascinated by neurobiology, personally, but and there's so much. What's so lovely about it is because now we have access to MRIs and such sophisticated equipment, we're able to see, like, so for example, people who have chronic anxiety and depression have a different structure of their brain than a typical person without anxiety and depression. I mean, it's fascinating to kind of understand all of this. We have a difference in serotonin levels. You know,
Oh.
oh yes, there. So our brain, and this is the most important like kind of sentence that you can remember. Our brain is wired to protect us, okay, from danger and to avoid discomfort.
Mm, dang.
It takes its job very seriously at all times. It's
Very good
reptilian.
brain.
It's reptilian. It's a reptilian brain. And
Mm.
we think of our minds as being so sophisticated. It's like the sophisticated organ because it does all this like cool stuff. But you know what? If you look at your PC or you think about your PC, I'm sometimes I'm like, how did it do that? Like, oh my God, it's so brilliant. No, the PC only does whatever you program it to do. It's the same thing with our brain. Our brain isn't sophisticated in and of itself. It's been programmed. And the beautiful thing about our brain, which I love, is its neuroplasticity. It has the ability to change. We see that with studies with mindfulness. I mean, I do a whole class, which is a 2-hour class on neurobiology and on neuroplasticity. We have the ability to change the structure of our brain because the gray matter of our brain, right? Yes, which is just like if you think about how incredible that is.
So I just want to reiterate because you said that someone's mind under an MRI, would have the structure will be different under like severe anxiety, depression, but that can change.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
I
Yeah.
love that because I didn't
Yeah.
want people to leave that and go, "Oh my God," is
Oh,
because
no, no,
I
no,
mean,
no.
if you were to see that
Oh,
image, right? You might go, oh, I'm that's me
yeah,
forever." You know what I'm
yeah.
saying?
But that's the beauty of doing these practices is that you're actually so I could prove that to you, okay?
Okay. Okay.
So I do transcendental meditation, which is a 20-minute, 2 times a day, and again, I'm not always like perfectly, I don't perfectly practice, which I always strive to do better. But um so when I first started doing it, it took time for my mind to actually get in a state of deep into my subconscious or unconscious, right? Because my brain wasn't used to it. Do you want to hear how this has transformed, which is like fascinating to me? Like I'm always amazed by it. Number one, I usually do my meditations early in the morning or in the morning time. And you know what happens in the morning. We wake up and we're planning and we have all this stuff going on, right? And our brains are like I don't know about you, but my brain is like it's like chatty and it's racing and it's like, and I'm a thinker. So I'm always thinking about things and that I need to do and planning and whatever. But now, since I've been practicing it, literally I say to myself, there is no way that my mind's gonna rest. Like there's no way. Like it's not. But when I ground myself and I'm sitting there in a moment of contemplation and meditation, literally it slips right in such a deep state of consciousness that I almost feel like I'm sleeping.
Wow.
Literally, that's how deep it is. And it's my most creative and thoughtful time periods when I have like a thought about something like that I haven't, like a memory or something creative that I want to be doing or whatever the case is. The other thing that it does, which is also fascinating, is it's a 20-minute meditation. So you're not supposed to awaken with any kind of bell or sound, to like, kind of distress the nervous system. And it's supposed to be kind of gradual and natural. My mind, literally within a minute of the 20 minutes, wakes itself up.
Mm-hmm.
There's
Yeah.
no way those things could happen without my mind learning how to do those things. It
Yeah.
didn't do it before. It didn't do it before.
And you wouldn't have been able you won't be able to handle all the multiple things in your life that you handle with clients and books and things like that too. So
Yeah, yeah,
it is a good pathway if you want to, if you have dreams and you want to achieve a lot of different things, and also, work on, I don't know what you call it, your history of your mind, body, and soul, and like digging it through all the parts and the hard things, and
Yeah.
learning to find ways to love those parts of you. And then um, I
Yeah.
feel like it's when you heal yourself, it's like a drop of water in a pond. It vibrates
Mm.
out, and everybody around you can see and feel the healing. And it doesn't mean we're not striving for perfection, and that's something that's got to be just thrown into the
Mhm.
trash can. There that to me that even sounds boring. Like I have no interest in perfection. Like what? Like that, and
Yeah.
then that's something that's going away with the 50s and the six, the old days, where we're like, that would be the perfect this and that. And it's
Yeah.
gone.
Well, it's also really interesting. So, like, because I'm working on my triggers now, like that's a big piece of work that I'm doing personally. And sometimes I don't get triggered where I ordinarily would. And it's so interesting. My brain will say to me, why am I not reacting? Like it's expecting me to react. And it's like it doesn't know what to do with me because I'm not reacting. And it's like, so I sit there for a moment. I'm like, how come I'm not reacting? Like, shouldn't I be reacting right now? And I'm so shocked. And then I'm like, no, this is a good thing. Like,
I have to
yeah,
say, because I've been working on this, I've healed all the suicidal ideation stuff, and we're writing a book about it right now. I had to say
yeah,
though, my triggers with the content is I've realized is abusive content. I think I watched try to put on 5 different shows recently, and 4 of them had a suicide in them. I think that, the people are trying to push the limits of storytelling to what is gonna wake
mhm,
people up or be the most intense, and, for me, I that's where I'm kinda struggling because I'd love to have a little bit of a warning. I don't really want to see someone jump off a building, and I don't want to see someone shooting themselves in the head. And I watched I thought it was a rom com, and it had a suicidal thing that
mm,
happened, and it did set me back. I had to go back, turn it off, do my tools. I cried instantly. It just was like almost like, and that was like a physiological,
mm,
immediate response to a piece of content, and it
yeah,
happens. And the people are like, I don't want to have to put trigger warnings on stuff. And I have a background in entertainment, 25 years in the studios, so I understand that. I don't want to change people's creative minds and what they
mhm,
want to produce, but as a person just trying to experience some
uh,
content, I don't want
I
to
to
have to go work on myself for 2 hours after your thing, and I
yeah,
didn't know about it because I could
uh,
choose something else. So, what do you think
I
about
totally
those, like, real heavy triggers that are very deep?
I well, I totally agree with you. Again, we all have our, kind of triggers, and it's hard to know how people are going to be triggered in what way. But, and there was a whole controversy, and especially, like, among, like, teens and young adults, like, content that's put out. I forgot what was that? There was a series that was on some time ago. I can't remember what it was called. And Netflix, and I can't remember what it was, but it was about suicidality and a rape and a couple of really kind of controversial topics, and parents were aghast, like, because it was pretty graphic and detailed. I can't remember what it was called, but it was some years ago. And, yeah, like, you don't know what somebody went through or what their past history was or whatever the case is. I would say, you yourself have to be vigilant.
Yeah,
Like when I teach my mindfulness class, it's very experiential. So every week my students come in, and they're graduate students. I'm doing something that's really challenging them emotionally and otherwise. And I always, always say to them, this may come up, be aware of it. If you're not comfortable doing it, sit it out. If you need to walk out, that's okay too. But again, it's a mindfulness class. I'm a mindfulness teacher, etc. Right. So I predicate it that way to make sure that nobody gets, unduly harmed. But the average person's not going to really be aware of that, unfortunately. They're
yeah.
just not, you
Well,
know.
maybe you can lead us through one of those mindfulness practices
Oh,
today, and,
sure. Sure.
that's, like, a good segue into doing a little
Yes.
work, and I
Uh-huh.
appreciate you so much and, what you're
Oh,
teaching
sure.
people, and, I love that, therapists can be, PhD educated, with all this intellectual information, and then they can go into this peaceful mindfulness. It just seems like there's such of a balance happening, and I
Yeah,
love I love where we're all heading, and I really think this is what helps people because you know,
100%.
it's the full bag instead of just parts that, you get one part of a doctor who's just going to do that. So, um,
Yeah.
let's get
And
back to, yeah.
yeah, so one thing I also wanted to say, which I think makes my book unique and I'm so proud of it, is at the end of each chapter, which was so important to me, is I included a guided meditation
Yes.
to integrate the skills. Yeah, so it has, yeah, scanned barcode. So once you finish the chapters and you do some of the exercises, there is the grounding that happens at the end of the chapter too, which I insisted on that for my book. Yeah, because it's not usually done, but I really, to me, it's so important. Like you really want a chance to integrate all the information. It's not just enough to learn it. So that being said, we've been talking a lot about grounding. We've been talking a lot about mindfulness. So I'm going to lead you into a guided meditation, and it'll be just 2 or 3 minutes because I know we're kind of thinking about time. But I think what we've really been talking about is just kind of being here in the moment and grounding ourselves, being in tune with our bodies, right? Leaning into our best selves. And this guided meditation is really going to be for relaxation and groundedness. Okay. Um, so if you could get comfortable, if you're sitting in a chair, you could lie down, whatever posture you'd like to get into. The most important thing is to have a straight back, a straight posture, and you want to put your hands on your thighs. Okay. And just make yourself comfortable. And if you're sitting, I want you to feel your feet strongly planted on the ground. You could keep your eyes open or closed. Again, whatever you feel comfortable with. And take several long, deep breaths, breathing in fully and exhaling slowly. And feel your abdomen expand on the inhale and relax and let go on the exhale. And begin to let go of any noise around you, any sounds, and shift your attention from the outside to the inside of yourself. Simply notice your breath without judgment, hearing the sound of my voice. Be cognizant of what you're feeling in your body. Note if there's any tension in any part of your body. And breathe into it and let go of the tension without judgment, without criticism. And think about what you'd like to cultivate for yourself. It could be anything. It could be reading a book or connecting with a friend or loved one. It could be changing a habit or learning to practice mindfulness or self compassion, whatever it may be for you. Try to identify specifically what you would like to work on and just have that in mind. Imagine whatever that is, that it's sitting on your lap. Put your hands, and again, we're using guided imagery, put your hands underneath it as if you're cradling it. Right? So if, for example, you want to learn to cope better with your anger, put that anger in your lap and just cradle it in your arms. Let it just sit there. Try to connect warmly to it. Here for you. I care for you. I'll be patient with you. Really feel into those feelings and take a moment to commit and think about what you're going to do behaviorally to make that happen. Notice as you're thinking about that, again, if there's any thoughts, feelings, body sensations that are coming up, and just note that. Notice if there's resistance, and just remain curious. And tap into the gratitude and how proud you feel that you're really willing to venture into this space. How challenging it may be, but this is something that you want for you. And hold on to that. Remember this commitment you made through the rest of your day, through the rest of your week, and beyond. And again, take one moment of appreciation for being in this space. That with you as you leave here today. And when I count to 3, and when you're ready, you could open your eyes. 3, 2, and 1. Thank you.
Do that while driving. Oh my gosh. I I
Yeah.
actually got a
Uh,
good tear in my eye, and uh,
Oh,
I
Gina, that I have to tell you that was on the fly. So
you're just
you
such. I have to say, I feel really good. Your voice is amazing. My soul
oh,
was actually just saying, "I love her. I love her." Like I really, you really are out there helping people, and I want to thank you from the deepest part of myself and every people that need this. And I'm just so grateful because you are in service, like fully. Thank you
thank
so
you. Of
much, and keep going. And thank you for offering to help and for your time today. And
course.
may
Always.
we may we send a big hug to anybody who feels stuck. Go and do her 14-minute on her website, and it'll help you find some answers. Pick up Ace Your Life. It's an entire workbook. Just keep it around. Just pick what works for you, what's resonating with you. Reach out to her on
So
her website.
yeah, and it's teachings, by the way, so it teaches you skills, and then there's like an exercise to integrate it, and then the mindfulness. Yeah, like a mindfulness meditation. So it's pretty comprehensive. Yes.
And again, it's from Morgan James Publishing, and also you have Habitat for Humanity in here that you were working with on that too. So it's a
Yes.
constant dedication for helping other people. So we're blessed to have you on the show today. Thank you. And this
Thank
has been the Liberated Healer. Please like, share, and subscribe. It really does help us. Really, really does. And share with anybody that needs this. And we just sending you big hugs and love today. Thank you.
thank you, Gina.
Thank you, Michelle.
Thank you so